your books, you have two of them, delve into a group called the Galactic Culinary Society. The first book was Cryovac, and the second book is Rising Terror. Can you give us an idea, for those who may not be familiar, what the Galactic Culinary Society is all about, the thrust of your books, and what you want people to feel and come away with when they read Cryovac and then now Rising Terror?
Right, very good question. First of all, just to point out, so for the Galactic Culinary Society, there's actually been 3 releases so far. This one, which is a double feature, Cryovac and Rising Terror, which is sort of released as one book together, but there's 2 before that that people can go back to and check out if they like Cryovac. It's sort of a bit of a throwback where you could read them in any order, adventure style. Where I got the idea is basically I've always been interested in food and food culture. It's not really the same thing as a foodie. So for me and with my travels, I've always been into science fiction and sci-fi, and there was always this idea of sort of putting those 2 things together, the idea of going to other places, other planets, imagining these ideas and taking it as far as you can take it, you know, with like aliens and what would aliens do. I mean, for the story Cryovac, for example, my brother introduced me to sous vide cooking, which I never heard of before. And just when he started talking about it, he's like, it involves cooking in a vacuum. And I'm like, cooking in a vacuum? That sounds like something you would do in space, right? So that's sort of just my brain starts going off and I start wanting to like do a story on that. So each of the stories in the series generally have some real world kind of starting point, some idea that flashed off in my mind. And I wanted to go off on an adventure to sort of explore that. And like I said, I really like sci-fi, science fiction, and I find it's an interesting combination. When I write something, a kind of rule I have is I don't really want to repeat myself, but I don't want to repeat anything else that I've read or seen out there. Like as much as I like it, I could reread those books again. So this for me was sort of something that I haven't seen. It may be a little hard for people to wrap their minds around initially. What's that whole idea about? I'm not sure. But that's sort of, what I wanted to go for was to do something that's a little bit familiar, but a little bit new at the same time.
In your story, there is a sourdough bread which nearly wipes out the universe. And that's, I can't imagine there's any other book that's ever been thought of or published that centers on that plot device. That's
it's not a sourdough bread. I should have brought it. Can you wait 1 second? Can you hold on 1 second? I'm just going to run to my kitchen. Hold on 1 second.
No problem. I just get a coffee here while I'm waiting.
So it is about a sourdough bread, but to make a sourdough bread, which is the threat to the universe in the story, is this, which is a starter yeast for a sourdough.
Okay.
It's been in my fridge, so it's a little like it should be above the elastic line when it's ready to go.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see inside. So it's this gooey stuff that becomes the blob that threatens the universe. I mean, I really like bread making. I've had the idea of doing a story with bread for a long time. For this particular one, I went out of my way. I spoke to Seamus Blackley, who's the creator of the Xbox and a huge sourdough guy, and he gave me some tips on how to make a sourdough. I've made 2 so far from this. This is Starbuck, because you're supposed to nickname your sourdoughs. That's the tradition. I don't know if you could.
I actually am familiar with Washington State, very familiar, yeah.
My sourdoughs came out flat, I don't know why, but my wife and daughter really like the flavors, so my wife wants me to cheat and buy like a commercial sourdough and put it in here and try again, so we'll see. But just the image of this blobby thing led me to some alien invasion type idea.
I get it.
But I also, my brain works in a weird way where I'll put 2 separate ideas together. So the other idea for this story in terms of the end of the universe is that I've always been interested in special relativity and like hard science a little bit.
That's what I was going to ask you about. Yeah, please talk about
Right.
that.
This goes back to, I don't know, I think I was 16 or 17, driving with my physics friend, and he's trying to tell me how special relativity works, and that, you know, the whole concept of aging differently, and it just didn't like sit well in my brain. How does this work?
Einstein, right, Dana?
What's that?
This is Einstein, right?
Einstein's theory of special relativity, correct.
Okay.
I mean, there's general relativity and special relativity, but the idea of, I mean, traveling at light speed where you age, someone would age differently relative to someone moving at a different speed is the theory of general relativity, and it's been expanded on a lot since Einstein. And I did a lot of research for this story, but also just for a lot of the stuff that I do because I wanted to know. The way I think it's understood in popular culture in general is kind of wrong. This idea that if, you know, I'm here going that way and you're going there that way at different speeds, I'll age one way and you'll age another way. They always kind of explain it that way, or in the Planet of the Apes movie, right, where he ages differently. But
Yeah.
what I found out, I mean, I mean, it's all based largely on math and some experiments that have proven it, though no one understands really why or how it works. And I don't want to use too much time on this one thing, but the main thing that I came to understand is that the key to it is if two bodies are traveling at the same speed relative to each other, which is the same, what they call, Andy kept using the term inertial frame of reference, they experience the same time. And they could be together like we are, well, we're relatively close. I feel like close to you on the screen, but we're still pretty close together on the Earth, traveling at the same speed. If we were on other planets, forget about the communication lag, but we would still be traveling, even if we're light years apart, we would be traveling at the same relative speed to each other, so we would experience the same time. Okay. It's only when one of those moves away at a faster speed, and some people theorize it's more related to acceleration or velocity, whatever the terms you want to use, it's only this guy who experiences the change. This guy's time stays the same to himself, and this is the one that it sort of slows down relative to this one. So it avoids that paradox where if he's moving away and it's slowing down for him, well, he's also moving away, so why isn't it changing, slowing down for him, right?
Yeah.
But it's only when they're begin at the same speed relative to each other, wherever they are in the universe, they could be light years apart, and one of them starts moving away faster, and it's the faster one who will have the slowing down. The experience of slowing down of time, and also the increasing of mass and other weird effects. So once I felt I understood it, I wanted, it was a good metaphor for the story, talking about time and how we all experience time and we can't stop time. And in that particular story, Rising Terror, there's a point where all my science is correct. And then it goes into, which is more a thought exercise than anything else, not necessarily what I believe for real, but you know, what a possible explanation is for that. Because some folks like Andy Weir seem content, the math explains it, it's fine, let's just leave it at that. And I'm like, but you know, we don't even know what gravity is. We've never seen gravity. We've seen, you know, with a microscope, electron microscope, you could see an atom, but nobody's ever seen gravity. Nobody knows what time is, these huge things. And experiments though prove that this is correct. Even for the aging process, they've done experiments on muons. It's a small particle coming from the sun towards Earth, and it lines up perfectly with the theories. So even in practice, it seems to be correct. So those were the inspirations for that story, which is too much. One story, but anyway.
No, I followed you. That's extremely complex. There's so many questions I have about that we can't get into, but I'm gonna do my own research on that. Thanks for that. Let me ask you about a project that you have worked on called Young Steve McQueen. For those of you who don't know, and many do, some don't. Steve McQueen was a world famous mega movie star who died too early in the 1970s. And you wrote a screenplay called Young Steve McQueen, and as with many projects in the movie biz, it didn't make it to the screen, but you do have it out in print, and it I think is in the screenplay form that you had written.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And you work with Steve McQueen's son,
correct,
Dad, on this screenplay. Can you talk about what drew you to Steve McQueen, particularly his younger days and his early career? Movies that I've seen, The Blob and The Great Escape, launched him into, like I say, legendary movie star status. What was it though that originally drew you to McQueen, and particularly his early career?
Right. Well, two points. One is, well, just to answer your question, really short, quick. He's cool, but the
Cool.
the other, just to correct something about working with Chad. I didn't work with Chad on this particular script. This script led to another project about Steve McQueen that I worked on with Chad, and Chad's producing partner discussed this script with me, but it was always deemed too expensive to pursue at this time. So we're not really, but there was a whole other project which deals, this is young Steve McQueen, but I was developing with Chad a project about his father's later career and his involvement with the Boys Republic and actually environmental stuff, whole side of Steve McQueen that most people are unaware of. And there's still some hope that that project will go forward. But coming back to what drew me to him, I didn't grow up like knowing about him. And I saw some of his movies just on TV back when, before Netflix, just watching like the History Channel and The Great Escape was on. Internet was around though, so I went and did a Yahoo search on him. And doing a quick search, like just his early life, before he was 17, was so amazing. It read like a movie. I was just like, why hasn't someone done a story on this before? I had my first feature film released and I was looking around for ideas, so there was that. And there was another, just reading that quick summary of his life. He had, a lot of those important events were places I had been. So, I mean, he falls in love for the first time in Myrtle Beach, which is where we used to go camping every Christmas time for years and years. He jumped ship in the Dominican Republic, which I visited with my parents. When I was young, they took me there. He goes to Labrador. I'm in Canada, so it's not quite Labrador, but just that similar type environment that I can imagine. So there was a bunch of those points where I felt sort of a sudden connection to him. And just like I said, he's cool. So I felt that would be a good story. And I've always been fascinated with sort of that time period that we're talking about, which is sort of the 1950s, in the States. So I just found it was really interesting, like a lot of meat to get into about him.